more on this wild week of layoffs and earnings and markets. John Tamny joins us, director for the Center of Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks, also an editor at RealClearMarkets. Good to have you back on the show. You probably heard John say earlier a possible recession, right? And I don't want to overplay this, but it doesn't feel like a recession. I mean, CPI is coming down, the jobs number seems to be relatively strong, and earnings seem to be strong, and the markets seem to be happy. Am I right?
Yeah, I think when you look at recession, I think the slowdown actually began a year ago, because you look at growth stocks back then, that's when they started to retreat, and growth is where you get the economic growth from. What I think we're seeing right now, paradoxically, is recovery, and that's what the market's like. Recessions signal an economy fixing itself. Any well-run business rushes to its mistakes. And so recessions are the process whereby companies rethink what they're doing, get rid of what's not working, and it's awful to be laid off. We've all gone through it. I've gone through it. But the workers laid off exist as recovery for other businesses that suddenly get access to talented quality workers at a lower price. And so the only danger to a downturn is intervention in it, because in the real world we're always fixing our mistakes, and that's, quote, the recession.
The layoffs, and I don't want to downplay that either, but if there's ever a time to be laid off, the record number of job openings seems to me a very good offset to that. If I'm the Federal Reserve and we're watching what we just talked about, what do you think they're thinking?
What the Federal Reserve is thinking is almost surely anti what actually makes an economy work. You and I have discussed this before. The Fed actually believes, against all evidence and logic, that economic growth causes inflation. The Fed actually thinks that the more people who have jobs and the more businesses are booming, that's actually got a downside to it. So who knows what the Fed thinks, but the simple truth is that this, as you allude, this outflow of workers from businesses is going to be manna from heaven from a lot of others. Goldman Sachs hires quality people. They're not all fits, but they end up succeeding in a big way elsewhere. Same with McKinsey. McKinsey's outplacement business is a huge business precisely because people want what McKinsey doesn't want. And so this represents a huge opportunity for growth for lots of other businesses as quality employees move on.
You talk like a seasoned MBA professor, right? You keep the high performers, or you hire more of them, and you get, I guess, pair off or get rid of the low performers, and that's how a company, I guess, becomes sustainable and successful. Let's talk quickly about these the earnings, because we've seen the earnings expectations come down a little bit, and we just started to see these earnings come in, and they seem to be pretty strong and pretty good. Is it possible that if earnings are too good, then the Fed says, hey, wait a minute, you know, the economy is too hot and we got to slow it down some more?
Well, it's possible the Fed could do that, but let's never forget that credit is a global endeavor. Capital inflows flow into the U.S. from around the world, and I would say the same for China. If you look at China, its recent and also long-term history, some of the most important capital that built China's economy came from outside the country. And so this notion that the Fed can somehow put up a stop sign to American economic growth is not fit for serious discussion. If there are good economic opportunities here, and there always are, because the only constant in the U.S. is progress, and I would say the same is true for China right now, capital is going to find it. If the Fed were a fraction of as powerful as some assume, the U.S. economy wouldn't be worth discussing. It's just a distraction that economists are interested in, but no serious person would make an investment based on what the Fed does.
Well, I think we are serious people, and I'm going to spend the weekend thinking about what you said, so I'm going to ask you for some advice. What sectors of the economy should we avoid, or what sectors should we really look at for opportunity over the next, say, 6 to 9 months?
Well, I think the sectors that you want to be interested in, paradoxically, are going to be things like crypto. Let me explain. Remember 20 years ago when the internet was a big bust and everyone said that this was over? In fact, it signaled the beginning of the internet as a major force in the U.S. economy. The same thing occurred 100 years ago with automobiles. My strong sense is that there will be major growth stories coming out of this crypto carnage. So that would be one of them. You always want to be in technology in the United States. My strong sense is that you're not going to want to be in energy, because energy is a yesterday concept that we can get from anywhere around the world.
Now, John, you know how I feel about crypto. Stocks are companies. Companies make money. Cryptos is a currency. It doesn't earn interest and it doesn't generate a profit. Are you telling me that we should put our money in crypto over companies that are profitable?
Always, you want to buy what's out of favor. And I'm merely saying that automobiles 100 years ago, just about every auto company formed failed. Did that signal the end of cars? Obviously not. In the early 2000s, the internet was a big bust. Did that signal the end of the internet? Certainly not. Amazon got down to $7 a share at the time. And so I think we're going to see something similar out of this. We're going to see a lot of high flyers emerge, high flyers that transform how we think of money. It's never made sense that government would have a monopoly on currency issuance, and capitalism requires a more stable currency concept that probably can only come out of the private sector. Time will tell, but never forget, it's where there's carnage that you can usually find the opportunities.
John Tamny giving us something to think about for the next couple of days.